Hi Libra, welcome to Pandora Astrology's monthly horoscope for February of 2020. For you this month, there's gonna still be that pile of planets in Capricorn right here in your fourth house of home and family, but other planets have moved on into your fifth house of creativity and your sixth house of work. And in particular, something that should be really interesting to you this month is that two planets that really matter to you are retrograde. One of them is Mercury. You've probably heard about that before, but the other one is Juno, an asteroid to do with committed relationship. And Julia's got lots to say about this. Hey, Julia, how's Juno going to affect the Librans of the world this month?
Good question. Well, first, I just want to speak a little bit about what is the difference between Juno and Venus, because when most
Mm,
people think about relationships, they immediately think about Venus.
yeah.
And both planets do have to deal with relationships, but in different ways. Venus shows us how we fall in love and how we express our feelings of affection, where Juno shows us more about what our long term partnership needs are to keep a relationship going. So what's interesting is that Juno is going to be going retrograde this month, the same month as Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
Um, and whenever a planet or an asteroid goes retrograde, it's a time of review in terms of all the themes that it represents. So I'll back up a little bit and talk about Venus first and how they're also going to interact together. So Venus is going to enter your seventh house, Libra, of partnership on February 7th. And where we have Venus is where we find some pleasure. So you could be really enjoying some more harmony and pleasure with your partner, which is something you really care a lot about. And you guys could be getting along a lot better than usual, for example. Now, Juno is going to be going retrograde in your first house of self, and that's going to be on February 8th. So that means you might be reviewing how you personally identify as being a good partner within your marriage or your long-term relationship. You might be thinking of questions like, who are you as an individual versus who you are as a unit with your partner? Are both sides of this equation satisfying you, and
Mm.
how you see yourself as a person? Now, both of these planets are actually going to oppose each other on February 25th. So there could be a little bit of tension between separating yourself as an individual and your identity within the relationship. And you also have in a lot of ways, we all have a long-term relationship with ourselves, not just our partners. So can you find a satisfying balance between the two of those? Or do you need to respect the relationship with yourself more? Now, another very important planet I'd like to talk about this month is Mars, the planet of action and activity. And it starts the month in your third house of communication. So this can be a real shoot from the hip transit where you just kind of say what you want to say without considering how it's going to come off to others. And, this could naturally lead to a little bit of conflict, which is something that you're a bit averse to, Libra. So just be aware of that. Then Mars is going to enter your fourth house of family and home on February 16th. So you could be more driven to accomplish more on the home front in some way.
Mm.
And that could mean getting through some much needed housework, repairing things around the home, maybe doing a redecorating project. But Mars is a planet that represents fighting of all kind. It's the archetype of the warrior. So just be wary of conflicts with the people that you live with or even within your own family. And there's also some more relational kind of news coming from the moons this month too, right?
Yeah, there sure is. There's a full moon in Leo happening on February 8th, and that moon falls in your 11th house of community and friends and networks. And the sun will be opposing it from the fifth house, creating a theme of a tug of war between who am I and who am I in the context of the groups that I'm a part of. Do they support my identity, my individuality, or did they, I don't know, undermine it? And for you, this is going to feel really like a pretty strong double theme. You may, because the moon in showy Leo is going to be in your 11th house, you may feel like you want to go out and show off in your groups of friends, whereas you might also feel like you want to pull back into your creativity and get more cerebral. So the tug of war is definitely going to be there, and it's also going to be connected very much in with that Juno and those themes of relationship and partnership and identity, and how do those things support or conflict with each other. So that full moon is happening on February 8th, but you might really notice its themes for about the 3-day period surrounding that full moon date. Now, later in the month, there is a general movement of planets into Pisces. And some of that happens as Mercury moves into Pisces, which it moves in there on February 3rd, but things really get interesting when Mercury goes retrograde, and that happens around the 16th. And there it is stationing, and there it is turning retrograde and completely retrograde right there in your 6th house. Now, Mercury struggles in this sign of Pisces, and we've got a video about this. It's the new moon in Pisces video in our February 2020 playlist. You might want to check that out because it also includes the themes of this Mercury, because when the new moon comes along, it conjuncts that Mercury. And right here it is on February 23rd. Make sure that that's the correct date. Yes. And so there are going to be even more themes to do with dream and vision, but also confusion and mystery. All of these are Pisces themes, and it's really the very reason why Mercury struggles in this mystical sign. Mercury is much more comfortable in Pisces' opposite sign of Virgo. Mercury loves to be detail-oriented and meticulous and above all correct. But in Pisces, Mercury has to contend with the murkier worlds of vision and imagination and dream and intuition and feelings. So Mercury in Pisces it being Mercury retrograde, of course, there's going to be a retrospective period to do with cleaning up old communications. And in Pisces, the positive is we can end up bringing a lot more compassion to the table for those conversations. But the negative is we can experience so much more confusion during those conversations when Mercury is in Pisces. So those Mercury themes are gonna sort of find their way into the new moon. And the new moon happening on the 23rd, we're going to be feeling it from the 22nd to the 24th. Again, that 3-day window surrounding it. And I think there are going to be a lot of feelings during this Mercury retrograde period where maybe you're ready to empathize with the other person more now than you have in the past. Or maybe you really want to pull the other person into your bubble to empathize with you and what you're feeling. And it could be fairly murky, so it's going to be really important to approach these clearing communications with as much compassion as possible. And that's some of where the challenge comes in for you, Libra, because while you're a fan of compassion as a general thing, you also see that fairness in life is rooted in the idea of two distinct, separate individuals who can then balance and negotiate with each other. Whereas in the world of Pisces, that's not how things are experienced. Pisces is about merging and blending and feeling with. And that's where things can get really confusing for you, Libra, because you really like stuff to be something that you can articulate in words, and you like it to make sense. So I think it's going to be a challenging new moon, a challenging Mercury retrograde, and approaching it with compassion and empathy is really the best course. Okay, there's another really great thing that I want to tell you about, which is that Jupiter is forming a lovely sextile to Neptune this month, and that is happening in its first pass of 3 going on this year on February 20th. And right here is Jupiter at 17 degrees of Capricorn, Neptune at 17 degrees of Pisces, and they are forming a harmonious 1/6 of the circle relationship that we call a sextile. And there's also a video about this in the 2020 news playlist, and I definitely encourage you to go check that out because this is an influence that's really just beginning here in February and going to go on all year. And what I like to say about this one is that Jupiter gets us in touch with our religious sense, our construct for the world, our worldview, our philosophy, if you will. And from that spring our ethics and our moral system. Whereas Neptune is so much more vague and undefined than that. Neptune is the feeling of being in touch with spirit, with the beyond, with things metaphysical. But when these two line up and they connect in a harmonious way, it's possible for those people in the world whose ethical and moral systems, which may be used in a practical way every day, when these moral systems line up with your deep intuition about your compassionate feeling of connection to all that is, well, then you can experience grace and joy this year, and it can be truly beautiful. So there's something great for you to enjoy. And because it's falling in the fourth house and the sixth house, where this may come down particularly for you, Libra, is at home. That's the fourth house theme, or possibly or at work, in the workplace. So look for growth and expansion in these areas and compassion and grace. Really nice stuff, right? And if you were interested in a reading this month, I would suggest the Mission Orders career reading because of planets moving into Pisces in your sixth house, particularly because Mercury's presence there suggests that there might be some old conversations that need cleaning up, some old thoughts and projects that are due for closure, that maybe weren't finished properly the first time and which need to be finished properly now. So the work arena should assume some greater importance for you, and should also be, I think, maybe having a sort of a frenetic, confused feel about it. And so if you want clarity, the right reading to get is the Mission Orders reading. And you can get that from the link below in the YouTube description there. And I think that's all we have for you today, Libra. I hope you enjoyed it. We sure have fun making these horoscopes for you. And we'll see you next month, March, when we make the next horoscopes. And until then, see you around the cosmos. Bye.
Bye-bye.